So recently, Todd Bowles, the coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, was asked like a question kind of about race, and because him and as you know, the Steelers and the Buccaneers are playing today. Both of those teams have black head football coaches. Todd Bowles, coach of the Bucs, Mike Tomlin, coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he was asked, something like, do him and Mike, do they know each other? Do they talk about the fact that they're both black coaches in the league? And also, I think another person asked him a question about, do you think like him being a black coach, him and Mike Tomlin being coaches, helps like younger black people to aspire to that or know that they can one day be that in that position themselves because of their seeing Mike and Todd in those positions on TV and so forth. And he said no, like we don't look at ourselves as black coaches. We just look at ourselves as coaches, and that type of thing. Now, here's what I think. I don't think Todd Bowles was being truthful, to be honest with you. I think he said what was right, what he thought was politically correct on the camera. But I'm going to tell you from my perspective what I think. I know that in the profession that I've been in in public education, the majority of the people who work in the buildings are white. Okay, the teachers, the administrators, the custodians, the secretaries, most of them are white. And I know that the district that I worked in for a long time, they actively pursued minority candidates. They also sought after white candidates, but they also made concerted efforts to bring in minorities because, let's face it, the population of the schools was heavily populated by minorities. And I think the district felt like the kids need to see at least some people working in the building that reflect the population of the students. And I can tell you from my own experience, at the one high school that I worked at, when I became a school principal, an assistant principal at the school. Now, there were other black guys working in the building in different positions. There were a few teachers. There were a few custodians. There were a few what we call behavior specialists. I was the only black assistant principal. And for many of those kids, the schools they came from, that they came from as far as middle schools, none of them had any male black assistant principals or principals. So for some of these kids, this was the first time that they had ever seen, some of these black kids, this was the first time that they had ever seen a black assistant principal or a black administrator, someone black that's in a leadership role in a building. Okay, even for the white kids, this was the first because most of them came from the same schools. And so I know I've had cases where kids would ask me like, hey, black kids especially, what's your position in the building? And I would tell them I'm an assistant principal. And they would say, what? You're a principal? Like you could hear the disbelief in their voice when I told them that I was a principal in the building, not a behavior specialist. That was a common position for blacks in the buildings that we worked at, But as an assistant principal, it was kind of like unbelievable for them. So my presence and just being in that position might serve the purpose of letting them know that, hey, I as a black male or as a black female or as a minority or a black and brown female or male, I can aspire to this position because I see somebody that looks like me in this position. Now, before I came here, I never thought that we were able to be in that position because everybody I saw in that position was white. So this can be the case as far as Todd Bowles and Mike Tomlin as head football coaches. If all of the coaches in the league were white, the head coaches and the assistants were mostly white, blacks or other black and brown people might not aspire to those positions or see themselves as capable of being in that position because no one else had ever reached that level. So although Todd Bowles and Mike Tomlin might not have discussions about, hey, we're black coaches in this league, them being in those positions does impact what younger people can see themselves one day being or aspiring to. So that is my opinion on that. I know as a youngster, when I was playing Little League football in the 80s, and Doug Williams, all I heard back then was black quarterbacks couldn't lead this. Black quarterbacks weren't smart enough to do this. But when you don't know how big of an impact that was for me, especially as a youth, I was a quarterback growing up, seeing Doug Williams lead the Washington team to a Super Bowl. In fact, the next season, I wore 17 because of that. I mean, I had great white players that I loved too. John Elway was probably one of my favorite quarterbacks. I wore number 7. But it meant something different when I saw Doug Williams, a person who looked like me, his skin color was the same as me, that led a team to the Super Bowl. That hit differently. So yes, Todd Bowles, Mike Tomlin, you're being in those positions. You don't know how big those of an impact that is on people that look like you, and also for those who don't look like you. It has an impact on everybody. It lets everybody know that there are black people that are qualified that can do this job, regardless if they're black or white. So that is something I wanted to say about in response to what Todd Bowles was asked in his press conference. Let me hear what you have to say. Peace.